I still share photos of my brother and my mom and stuff on anniversaries because I want people to remember them. I don't want them to be forgotten. That's the power of photography too, right? If my house caught on fire, what would I grab? I would grab my photos of my loved ones, so yeah. Now we all have phones, so maybe I'll just grab the phone because the photos are on them.
Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode 110. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Today's guest, I already know it's going to be a fun one. I have no idea about anything about her, so that's the best part about it. I know she's a very talented photographer, obviously. So please name and who you are.
I'm Leah Hennel, and who am I? I'm still trying to figure it out, but I am a photojournalist, visual storyteller. I'm a mom and a wife. Yeah. Living life.
Well, you said it so easily, like, who am I? And obviously we talked off camera about you can thank Candace for that hard question to start the thing.
Yeah, thanks, Candace. Yeah, Candace Ward, another really good friend of mine, photographer. So
yeah. Before I get into this, I want to, I've been doing this little it's like an ask before we get into the show. I'm trying to get more exposure on the show. So I'm asking people if they like the show, like this episode or previous ones. I'm asking them to leave a comment, share it with their friends, do whatever. So I had to get that out of the way now before we get into your story. So sorry about the shitty sales pitch.
I get it.
I don't know if you've seen any of these. Have you seen? Did you see
Candace's.
Okay, good. So you have a loose idea about what's about to go down. So, I like the guests to go back as far as they want to go, how they grew up, where they grew up, how their parents influenced them. This would be really interesting based on you and I both growing up in Calgary. So yeah, just kind of all your influences at a young age. And then we'll kind of weave a path to where you are today and how in the hell you get to take some of the photos you take. So have at it.
I'm still questioning how I get to do that too. Yes, I grew up in Calgary, born and raised. Went to Colonel Sanders Elementary, not named after the chicken guy. Colonel Irvin, James Fowler High School, graduated 1996.
Yep.
Well, I grew up mom, dad, my both parents worked.
Yeah.
We spent... my mom she was a stay-at-home mom till I started grade 1.
Yeah.
And then she worked at the library at Diefenbaker.
Were you the youngest?
I was the youngest, so my brother was older, so he was 22 months older than me.
Yeah.
My dad was in the oil business, petroleum technologist. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they both worked, and every summer we spent the summers up in Stettler. My dad grew up on a farm, so we spent our summers at the farm. So I kind of feel like I grew up as a city kid, but also a rural kid.
It's a good mix.
It is a good mix. I'm going to jump around. I know
you
just
go.
I could jump around.
You go wherever you want, and I gotta just keep my wits and stay with you. So. And
like I said before, this is super awkward because as a photojournalist, the story is not about me.
Which is fascinating to me, right?
Yeah.
that's been hammered into your soul.
Definitely. This is no one cares about my story, but I want to try and make you care. So I grew so we spent summers on the farm, and I remember one summer I was 9. And my brother and I went to stay with my great aunt on the farm. My parents had dropped us off there for 2 weeks. And we were coming home from a fair, and my aunt was like, what do you guys want for dinner? And I said, well, chicken. And my brother said hamburger or something, or steak. So I assumed we'd drive into town and go to KFC and get Kentucky Fried Chicken. Well, my aunt grabbed my hand, and when we got back to the farm, took me out to the chicken coop, had the axe, and I remember it so clearly. She was in this almost a see-through dress, nightie, she must have been in her 70s. Took the axe, grabbed the chicken and cut the head off, and
Crazy.
I had to help her pluck the feathers over. And of course, as soon as it landed on my plate, as soon as it was ready to eat, I didn't want to eat it. And my brother was just in hysterics laughing.
Crazy.
And all I kept thinking was what if we did get steak? Would we have to go out and to the cows?
And that's why you remember, I was going to ask you.
It's
9 years old.
Yeah, 9 years old, field to table. And I didn't eat chicken for a long time after that.
Wild.
But literal, a real education of this is where my food comes from. Yeah.
At a very young age. That split between Calgary, I've been to Stettler a couple times playing hockey.
No way.
Yeah. So it's
You know Buffalo Lake?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we grew up too.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy.
So my parents bought a cabin there, or a lot there in 1968. They were married in 68. They bought it. Yeah, and it was just trees, and they built this cabin. We had an outhouse until maybe 2002.
Wow.
Yeah. We spent every summer there on the lake, water skiing. It was amazing.
No way. So you don't, obviously you know nothing about me either, but I'm like a water ski freak.
No way.
That's all I do. So like last summer, I skied about 75 days.
No, where do you go?
So there's a club just south of Calgary on
Yeah.
Dumbo Road.
I know exactly where it is.
Predator Bay.
Yep.
So I
I
skied
photographed out there.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that's so funny.
For the Worlds or whatever. Yeah. So.
And at the Pan Am Games, I recently did.
No
I was
way.
photographing the skiers. The family's from Innisfail area.
Dodds.
Yes.
Amazing. So yeah, so I've skied there for 10 years.
Wow.
And then my parents got a place in BC.
That's so funny. Yeah.
So I'm like,
I'm not a great skier. I could do it. I can slalom.
but it's interesting how you talk about that moment in your life, or that kind of lifestyle is a big part of it, right? Like
It was huge. Like when I look back on my childhood, I had a great childhood. Loved my parents. Like it was great. I figure skated. So my brother played hockey, and I figure skated from the time I was 3 until 20. So like we grew up in the rink too. I don't know how my parents afforded it. When I think about and we were, they like, I guess we grew up like middle class.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's interesting to think about that though, because there's lots of interesting things about this conversation. But when you said your mom waited till you kind of went to school to start working, my mom did the same thing with our family too. So I'm the oldest, middle brother, and the younger sister.
Yeah.
So when she was old enough to go to school, then she got a job. And so she raised all of us, and then, they get to this point where, okay, we're out of their hair. And then they go they find a job.
Yeah, it was so interesting. Yeah, I had honestly like the best. I mean, we grew up in the 80s, 90s. I mean, I remember the banana seat bikes, no helmets, no phones.
Yep.
So my parents didn't know, we were just told come back at dinner and then come back when the street lights come on. And, like, it was awesome.
But yeah, and I remember the same thing, because as I have people on the show and then I'm asking these questions, sometimes I think about like how I would answer them. But you're saying like the exact same things I would say.
Yeah, it was great. Like I remember learning to drive at the cabin, or it was great. It was awesome. And then so when I should backtrack a bit, when I was in high school, so grade 10, 11, and I was an okay student. My brother was an amazing student, so I tried to keep up with him.
Uncomfortably amazing?
Yeah, and so like my math marks weren't so great. So like he took physics, so I took physics. And
no way.
I remember
Are you really keeping up?
I was trying, and I remember my physics teacher was like, please, I want to pass you. I'm going to give you 51, but don't ever take this course again. Yeah, so I just tried to keep up with, I idolized my brother. And we hung out all the time.
Yeah.
I was the annoying little sister,
Yeah.
though. But yeah, so in high school, so in grade 10, there was a work experience program. I don't know if your school did that. So you could pick to go do work experience wherever. And I grew up reading National Geographic, looking at the photos. And because my mom had gotten a
subscription
to
me
it.
too.
Yeah. And so I was like, I wonder if I should I thought I'd maybe be a veterinarian, but again, that would require marks that I probably didn't have.
Yep.
And I went, a friend of mine in that course, her uncle or someone worked at the Calgary Sun. So she said, why don't you try there? So I said, okay. So I did. So in grade 10, I got a work experience working in the photo lab, like in the dark room at the Sun, and hanging out with all the photographers.
Cool.
And I just got hooked. So I did that all through high school. Went to SAIT, photojournalism, graduated in 98, still working at the Sun, and I just continued. And then I don't know, you probably remember there was a strike, or the Herald tried to have a strike. So I was covering that while I was at the Sun. When the strike ended, there was some job openings, and I took the graveyard shift, 11 at night till 7 a.m.
Crazy.
And I was like 20, 21. Yeah, it was, it was crazy.
Isn't it? It's fascinating how just like one opportunity puts you on a path.
Yeah.
And they don't see coming.
Yeah. And like maybe I was like I just remember I knew I had to leave the Sun. I'd been there 5 years, and keep in mind, I'd been there when I was 16. So I felt like, and the photo editors would always look at me as a kid. And so I wanted to try something different. And so, I took the opportunity at the Herald, and it was the best thing I ever did. I joked that the photo editor I had then, Peter Verseau, if he listens to this, he reminded me of like Jay Jameson from Spider-Man. The editor, always really gruff.
With a mustache.
Yeah.
Cigar.
He didn't have a mustache or cigar, but he was that kind of So it gave me an opportunity and like assigned me assignments that were like big stories, like sink or swim. So you're either going to make it or you don't kind of thing. So it was a great opportunity.
Did you, like growing up, were you like creative? Like obviously you had the figure skating background. So obviously like figure from 3 till 20 was a big chunk of time. Yeah. And competitive?
Competitive, Not great competitive, but
I
did compete. I dedicated. 7 a.m. practices before school, after school. In fact, I was able to take my parents' car to high school, because I had skating practice after. But I'd drive by my brother as him and his friends are taking the bus to school.
Wow.
He was
sucker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he didn't like that. Was funny. Now when I look back, I was so mean. Why didn't I give him a ride?
No need. He's taking care of himself.
Yeah, but creative, I don't know. My mom was really creative. My mom, if she could have, she grew up. She had a really like harsh upbringing, grew up very poor in Calgary and kind of Edmonton, and her father was an alcoholic. Just some terrible stories. Like they were living in a garage in Sunnyside or Hillhurst, and this is in the 50s, 60s, late 50s. Yep. Like there was no bathroom, so they had to like knock on the house to ask to use the washroom. So my mom always instilled in us, like do whatever you want. So she was a feminist, so she didn't want me to stay inside and learn to sew or cook or anything. She's like, you just go out there and play. If you want to play with the boys, you go. Because I was a tomboy, even though I figure skated.
Got that brother to keep up with.
Yes. Who also figure skated.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Played hockey and figure skated until he was probably in grade 6.
What do you think
to get better at playing hockey.
Of course,
so my mom and dad didn't care. Like if he wanted to gender didn't matter. Like you go do whatever you want. And so I do remember it was hard to find. He had white figure skates. And I do remember back then some kids might have teased him. So my mom had sewed like a black covering for the skate or something.
Cool.
Yeah. I do remember too, like at that time, again, I'm jumping around.
No, you're good.
In the 80s, my dad got laid off in the oil business like twice. Right. So I remember like hearing about that, but not really. They kind of kept us sheltered.
Like you didn't feel it?
I just remember, we weren't supposed to talk about it. It was just like, your dad got laid off. You guys are spending the summer at the cabin and your dad's there for the whole summer. So we spent 2 months at the cabin instead of coming back and forth because they were working, right? So they just made it fun for us.
Can you imagine you being a parent now? And
no.
And
I can't. No, I don't know how they did it. And and like I said, my mom, never complained. I look back on the memories because just like my mom died in 2004. So it's 20 years ago on the 20th. So just 2 days ago. I mean, we could talk about grief forever because it never goes away. Like and it's my mom. She was my best friend, and my brother died in 2017 at 40 from a heart attack. So you've been around. Yeah. Like I think, and now covering stories that are really hard to cover, if it's, I feel like I understand the person I'm photographing.
Yeah. At a very intimate level.
Yeah. So I think, like I always say, I was 25 when my mom died. I was 5 months pregnant in a bad relationship. Yeah. We got divorced down the road. But I remember thinking I had the best childhood. Like for 25 years, I was like kind of sheltered from, not sheltered. I was obviously covering news stories when I was 16. So I knew what was happening in my community and the world.
Yeah, but you just didn't have any negative or traumatic experiences.
Yeah. And until I don't know why I went down this road, but until you have those traumatic experiences or you lose someone that you really love, you can't explain it to anyone what that grief is like. Like I said, it's been 20 years and I could still, like someone will say something and I'll just bawl. I'm like, I miss my mom or my brother, right? We were,
It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a
definitely.
lot for one person to handle.
Yeah. Like 2004, I think it was like the best and worst year. My mom died and I had my son. I remember being pregnant actually in 2004, covering the Red Mile, the Flames run, the first playoff run. And I was out there like 8 months pregnant. And it was, do you remember Shirts Off or Kippers Off?
You and I are the same vintage. And you don't know, again, you know nothing about me.
But I would be photographing this Shirts Off or Kippers Off 8 months pregnant. And then I went into labor actually. Like it was early in the playoff round. So like I had Hunter April 28th. I went into labor like after covering a game in the Red Mile. And then I was 6 weeks early. I had my son. Yeah.
Crazy.
So
04.
Yeah. And so 2004 was it was wild.
Does it take a while to recalibrate after a year like that? Like,
I think so. I don't think I had time because honestly, my mom dying is just the most tragic thing at the time that has ever happened to me. But I wanted to just sit there and drown in my sorrows. But then I had a baby. So I couldn't. And, my dad was like upset. He had lost his wife of 35 years. Yeah. I was going through a divorce. So that it was just like, I just felt like after I got through that year, you throw anything at me. I'm fine. I'm okay. Like I can handle this. But through all that, photography just, I don't want to say saved me. Yep. Photography it helped me. Like it's my passion. It's hard to describe I love photography, but specifically documentary photography, photojournalism, like real authentic stories. So I just kept busy.
Amazing.
And I brought my son with me
So growing up, like there was this, did you feel like you had a creative thing? Did you feel like you had an eye? Did you feel like, as you're looking through those magazines, like were you framing your own shots? Would you be walking down the street, driving down the hall, like at the lake or anything? Like, was there any?
I don't think so. I honestly,
I think fascinating.
Yeah, I don't think there was. I honestly think I was shy. I was insecure as a kid growing up, and I feel like when I found this passion of photography, I don't know if it's creative because it is creativity and photojournalism and documentary, right? Yep. Like I think it's a very creative field, even though it's real authentic storytelling. I feel like it helped me get over, I was curious. So my curiosity as a kid, for sure. I think that's kind of where this led. Maybe not, I'm not that creative, but it took away my fear. So I'm just a curious person. So having a camera takes away my fear.
Amazing. When you first started, it was like darkroom film. So you had to be do you think that was do you think you learn more in that kind of like technical thinking about your composition, thinking about what you're doing? Because every time you hit that trigger, there's a lot of work behind it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what were rolls of film? Was it 24 frames or 36 shots you got on a roll of film? Yeah, it taught you about light composition, but to really see light, where nowadays on like digital cameras or your phone, they're great, but you don't really understand the technical side or maybe so much as the composition. People just add a filter on it to look good, right? Which I can't in my field. I can't add filters to those photos. Like that is exactly what it looked like coming out of the camera. You could do levels and curves and stuff that you would do in a dark room, like dodging and burning, but that's it. So you really have to learn about composition, lighting. Yeah, so film helped. I think everyone should learn film. It's funny, I told myself I'm not going to shoot film again or use film again because digital cameras I like. But yeah, I just bought myself a Rolleiflex film camera so that you get 12 frames per roll. And I thought I'd slow down a little.
And then how are you going to?
I'm going to develop it myself, the negatives,
you're going to make a dark room?
I'm not going to go I don't know if my husband and son would like the whole dark room. Yeah, so I'm not going to go that far. So I'll develop the negatives, and then if there's something that I want printed or something, or I can digitize it with the digital cameras, just on a light table, the negative.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
What is it about like your first like early memories of the sun? Like, do you remember your first kind of jobs? Do you remember? How do you remember things? Is it a picture that takes you back to a time always?
Yep. It's my diary is my photos. So even when I'm traveling, I'm taking photos just to remember that moment, whether it's on my phone or whatever. But yeah, I remember my first time in at the Sun. I met a photographer there, Mike Drew. who's an amazing photographer, and he still does these columns for the Herald Sun, like on the road with Mike. But I remember meeting him, and he looks like a big biker and long hair. And I just remember being terrified. I was 16. I was shy. I was the only female in that department. So it was a lot. And, you know, it's at the Sun. And I remember, I think one of my first assignments was photographing a sunshine boy. Like they had sunshine girls, but they had sunshine boys. I remember doing the sunshine cowboys down at the Stampede. So it was like I think it was Fred Whitfield, who was one of the competitors, super famous rodeo guy. Yeah, so he was one of my first photos that I had published, and it was,
way. Roper?
Yeah, Roper. Yes. Yeah, he was great. But at the time, I had no idea who he was. Rewinding a bit, when I was at SAIT, I did my internship with Sports Illustrated. Again, I figure skated. Sports were always in our lives. My dad was a big sports fan. My brother as well. But I had to pick a place to do an internship. And I thought, well, I'm already at the local newspaper. So I'm just going to go big. And it was a local photographer who was friends with a Sports Illustrated photographer. So that's how that came about. But I remember standing there, and I went to Florida. I turned 19 down there by myself in the hotel room. I had to pick the photographer up, and he was really grumpy. It was mostly me bringing coffee and stuff. But I remember going to, I think it was Legends Field for baseball, their baseball spring training. I knew nothing about baseball. And I just remember the photographer was like 6'4", 6'5". I'm 5'4". He set up a camera on a tripod, said if there's a play at third base, like just fire on the trigger. And of course it got knocked out of focus. And there was this big, I was yelled at. It was, you really learn how to have thick skin. And I remember Darryl Strawberry sitting there, and I knew who he was and saying hi to him. Like, Warren Sapp, football player, Tampa Bay, went to his house.
Why?
We're doing a portrait. And so we went to his house, and he had, what are those? Not VLTs. What are the old, like, Pac-Man?
Oh, like the stand-up video games? Like the arcade games?
Yes, he had a whole room of arcade games. Yeah.
Crazy.
So I remember going there. I remember, it was crazy times.
And this is all like, but to get the internship, it was just a connection through Calgary that got
It was a connection through Calgary, through a photographer here. And I just applied and was like, hey, I'm in Calgary.
Random, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so random. I don't know. I remember, it was so bizarre. Yeah.
When you got to SAIT, did you know right away that this was like your thing? Like you were all in, like this was like your lights were on?
I love learning about the world, my community, news. It was the camera gave me, it was my ticket to behind the scenes, to people, I guess, the world. Yeah. I learned I still am learning every day. Yeah.
And back then, was it, you didn't care what story you were sharing? Like it could be sport, it could be life, it could be whatever.
You know, we do say like when you're at a photographer at the newspaper, we have to photograph everything. So you're not just a sports photographer, you're not just a news photographer, portrait photographer, food photographer, you're everything. So it's great because it's helped my skills. You know, I mean, in 2007, so I stayed at the Herald for 19 years. In 2007, I left in 2019. That's a whole other story. But in 2007, the newspapers pivoted to video. Because, of course, 2007 was kind of the start, like Facebook, social media. So it was trying to, I mean, we all know where media is today, and it's sad. I think it's important for democracy to have real journalism. I say real because there's a lot of influencers too, which is great, but that doesn't mean that's the full story.
It's interesting to talk about journalism right now. So one of the guests I had on, he was 104, Ryan Stett. He owns King Snow, the snowboard magazine.
Oh, okay.
He started off in journalism in Calgary, so he went to SAIT.
So funny.
And so he was talking about the state of where journalism is at right now. And so listening to him talk about a similar topic was really fascinating.
Yeah.
You've seen it all change.
Oh, I started in film, and I kind of came in like just after the glory days. Like I was able to come in and I remember in 2001, 9/11, a reporter of mine at the Herald and myself went down to New York with the local fire department here. They were going to apparently help with cleanup. So we went 4 months after that happened. We did stories on a couple from here that were adopting a baby in Ethiopia. So I kind of came in where we were still doing these big trips, Olympics. My first Olympics was the Paralympics for Sochi, Rio. And I did Pyeongchang and then,
those experiences, you just like rattled off like two of the biggest events in the world. When you're going there, do you understand what you're like getting into? Like the
I'm terrified of screwing up. I have imposter syndrome. I can't even say it. Imposter syndrome. I'm just terrified of not getting the photo or not. The older I've become now, I just try to, I don't know, not please myself. Maybe I am trying to please myself, but I try to just not hear all the negativity. You know, my industry is super competitive. So I try to turn that off and do the best I can, like of my ability, and hope whoever hires me agrees with it. But it's like, you know, it's the Olympics for these athletes, but it's also the Olympics for photography. It can be terrifying. Yeah.
So when to get to those levels, do you have to like prove yourself in Calgary? Like, is there like a pecking order in town, or is it?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's changed so much. So I don't really know. I think a lot of it comes down to there is a lot of really good photographers who are really talented, but they might not be the easiest to work with. So I think it's a bit of both. You have to just be a kind person, a good person. And and if your work will show if it's good.
So the sun, you kind of cut your teeth there. Shooting dudes in Speedos.
Oh my gosh. It was, I remember I was a copy runner too. So a copy runner back in the day was, you know, you would run the copy. This is like before my time. Right? Yeah, to the editor. But it was before my time. So when I showed up in 97, 98, kind of around there, 99, for a copy runner, it was literally getting coffee and food for the staff. So you would go take their Tim Hortons order and go grab the coffee. If a reporter and photographer were on like a stakeout, or we called them perp walks, like where they were sitting outside the
cop shop,
arrest processing unit, and it was like midnight and they were hungry, you'd get a call to go bring them food.
Glamorous.
Lots
of practice with your camera.
So filing negatives, printing photos. And then I also worked on the weekends at the Red Deer Advocate. I was photographing with film then as well. So like at a hockey game, we would have to, you know, develop the film on the reels in the room on deadline. It was, And then when digital came, of course, you remember the plug-in, you know, you had to decide if your phone was going to be plugged in or your computer.
Totally.
So
when you go to the Herald, what's inspiring you when you get there?
There's women photographers. So that was a huge inspiration for me because there wasn't a lot of female photographers doing photojournalism. There's still not, same with sports photography, but there was women there. I think there was 3 when I started there.
What is that? Obviously I find this fascinating because I haven't felt that. I don't know what that's like to walk into an environment where you're like,
where it's, you
know, like is it like what actually goes through your head?
I think when I just thought it was great. There was other women to commiserate with about female stuff or whatever. But it was just great seeing someone who, you know, looked like me doing what I want to do. So that was like great. And don't get me wrong, when I started at The Sun, like I said, Mike Drew, huge mentor. I had a lot of male mentors that were great, but it was nice having a female, right? Or in 2004, when I had my son Hunter, there wasn't a lot of women staying in the industry that had kids. And I went through a divorce. So now I'm a single mom working a night shift, weekends. Like this is the same for any parent, man or woman, whoever, who has a child and is working shift work. You always wonder if like you can do it, right? And so then if you're a single mom, but my dad helped out a lot.
Amazing.
And I'm remarried now to a great guy, so that helps.
So the Herald, and so You're there for 19 years?
Yeah. I grew up there. I feel like I did grow up. I went from, it was 16 to 40 in newspapers full time.
What is that even like? Like
I don't know. I don't really think, because I'm still kind of living it. So I don't know. It was great. Honestly, I have had a front row ticket to so many events.
That's what I'm fascinated by. Like,
yeah. So many events, and I've met so many people, you know, but everyone's just the same, right? So I treat everyone the same, whether you're a top athlete or a CEO, you know, or some of my friends who are unhoused, we're all the same.
Yeah. It's you have such an interesting perspective of the city and how it's grown.
Yeah.
Like I can't. When did you start? So I was
16, so 95, 96, 95.
The city's completely.
It's so different. I remember covering Y2K. In 2000, we thought the world was going to end. Mm-hmm. I remember being on the roof waiting for the fireworks over Olympic Plaza and waiting for like all the like everything to just shut down. Mm-hmm. Planes were going to stop, like everything was going to cease to work. And I remember, and then nothing happened. It's so bizarre covering all the different the mayors in the city, right? Mm-hmm. I think when I started it was El Duer, and then Bronconnier. So like having seeing all the, it's amazing. It's definitely like I guess it's like my education. I'm learning about my community. Mm-hmm.
Like front row, like you said, front row.
Front row, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like literally.
Yeah. Like it's funny. So my brother was an accountant and I remember being at dinner or something and my photo friends and I would laugh, like, what do you say when they're like, so what'd you do today? And my brother would whatever. And I'd be like, well, I went up in a hot air balloon and took photos of the football game over McMahon. Mm-hmm. But I didn't say any of that because again, I felt like it's not about me. I'm not going to, no one cares about my life. Mm-hmm. So it's hard. It's weird talking about it.
Well, I'm sure it is. Cause
my son doesn't think I'm cool. He's 19 now. University. Yeah.
Yes. You're definitely not cool.
No, I remember, and my husband, so Hunter's stepdad, was a sports writer at the Herald. Like he covered Flames for like 20 some years. But we had to go talk at his school about newspapers and media. And he was in grade 5 at the time. And I thought he would be embarrassed, but he actually came up and sat right beside me, but didn't say anything. Yeah.
A little nod.
Yeah. Like we used to take him, again, when you're juggling as a parent and, a Friday night, there'd be a press conference call that the Flames coach was traded or whatever. And we'd both have to go because I was working nights and then it was his beat. Yep. And we'd go and we'd take Hunter with us and he'd be 5 or 6 sitting. We wouldn't do this all the time because it's not professional, but sometimes you get stuck. And so you'd give him a granola bar and he'd be sitting under in the dressing room waiting, but he did not care. No, he didn't think it was cool at all. Whereas his friends would be like, wow, you got to meet. Yeah, he didn't care.
The how do you keep being inspired? Like when you get called out to go do something or like wherever you go, what do you do? Like how do you get
curiosity. I am so curious. So that inspires me. And I'm also inspired to be educated. So if I get called, I'm trying to think of an example. Well, in 2015, when Syrian refugees came to Calgary, I didn't know much about Syria or what was, like I knew, but I didn't know the culture or whatever. So I was super inspired to connect with a family and document them and learn from them. And so I connected with a family, the El Dahirs, who farm just northeast of the city now. And I've been documenting them for what's that? I'm terrible at math.
8 years?
Thank you. Yeah. 8 years.
Your brother was the accountant, right?
Yes, not me. I'm not good with numbers. But that inspires me to just be educated, or if there's something I don't know about or someone I don't know about that I just want to reach out and learn more about. I did a story recently with the LGBTQ plus community of a drag queen who lives in Sterling, Alberta. Like that's a Mormon town. But I didn't know much about it. And so I just reached out and said, look, this is what I do. Do you mind if I come hang out with you? And just, the best things that I know how to do is just listen and observe. And that's what I do. So yeah, I'm inspired every day by I don't know. It's just, people are amazing. Yeah.
When you, storytelling is obviously at the root of what you do.
Yeah.
Do you write with the photos, or how does this actually work?
So I hate writing.
So when you're showcasing these individuals, what does this actually look like?
So I hate writing. So I try to team up with a writer.
Yeah.
But I did one story that I worked on that, just was, I guess, not a favorite, but really educated me on being a female and unhoused. So couch surfing, living on the streets or wherever, was with this woman, Barbie Harris. I spent a year with her. So I did write that one because I felt like we had a connection, like we had built this relationship that it would have been unfair to bring someone else in, like unfair to Barbie to bring a stranger in, essentially to be like, hey, tell her your story or him your story. So I did it, had really good editors because I can't write fast and I'm not that great. But yeah, I did it, and she ended up getting she got cancer through the story. She died, and it was just this whole long piece on like everyone deserves to die with dignity. And Barbie taught me so much. Not judge a book by its cover. I thought I was not doing that before, but I learned so much from her.
It's a heavy way to learn, though.
It is, but I think because of my experiences in life, life is heavy. So I know we're inundated with visuals every day and it's happy and stuff, but that's not real life, right? Real life's a roller coaster and it's short, right? So I feel like this life is so short that we should be covering the good, the bad, the sad, it's everything. Yeah.
That perspective, life is short. Have you always...
No, when you're a kid, you think you're invincible. Like I thought it just really, it hit, I think when my mom died, I was like 25, but maybe I was still in denial. She had pancreatic cancer. I actually photographed her going through that as well. I never did publish those photos. They're terrible. They're like terrible as in like, I'm not happy with how I don't know. They're more for me, I guess.
Which is fair, right?
Yeah.
Everything doesn't
But I ask people to share and let me photograph them in the most personal, intimate situations that, but yeah, life is short kind of hit me, I think when my brother died, because you know your parents will die. Usually if it goes the way life is planned, your parents die before you, but you always think if you have a sibling, you're going to grow old together. They'll always be there. So that really hit me. Yeah. And again, I covered a lot of sadness during COVID, the pandemic. So yeah, life is short. I've seen personally how short it is.
Do you, have you adjusted the way you kind of operate or how you think or how you look at life, like make decisions, knowing that now?
Oh yeah, definitely. I also, what was this? I love Ted Lasso.
It's such a good show.
Yeah. And so when he said that Walt Whitman quote, right? The world needs more curiosity and less judgment. That is how, it wasn't put into words that I thought about it, but that is how I try to live my life. Right. I try to, because no one knows what someone else is going through. Yeah. So, yeah.
How do you walk into those situations when people are either, if you're going to go shoot sports, generally you're shooting the highlight, right?
Yeah.
Like it's excitement. There's a lot of people are there.
The field of play.
Yeah.
Although, kind of to interrupt, I actually, for sports, I don't necessarily like photographing field of play. I like behind the scenes or what's happening.
Like
the emotion, exactly. Human emotion is fascinating to me. Yeah.
Do you, when you're going into the situations looking for emotion, you're walking into one where it's like an unhappy environment and you have to shoot this thing. Like you're the media person creating the media. Yeah.
It's hard. I'm trying to think of an example. I remember my early days at the newspaper photographing, and I don't like covering accidents or stuff like that, or Humboldt, right? Where you're knocking on doors of someone whose loved one just died. It's hard. I don't think anything can prepare you for that. But just to know that you might get yelled at, a door slammed in your face, and rightly so. I would do the same. But for the most part, people want to share the story of their loved one, of how amazing they were and why they love them so much. So that's kind of how, I photograph from a distance if it's something. Trying to think of an example. There was the Brentwood killing, so I covered that, and I remember some of the classmates came and it was raining that night, and they were singing or something, or huddled around, and I just stood far back, photographed, and then I came over and explained what I was doing and if that was okay, and they said yes. No, I didn't have to ask them because they were on the street, but my personal ethics and morals, I do go up and ask. For the most part, people are really willing to share, which is shocking to me because I don't know if I would. Like I said, sitting here and telling me about myself, I don't, Yeah, but for the most part, people do want to talk about themselves or their loved ones, and especially in tragedies.
It's not even themselves, right? It's almost like it's not an ego thing to talk like in that environment, right? They actually they want to share a story that's impacted them, or
they want them to keep being someone to keep remembering them.
Yeah.
You know, I still share photos of my brother and my mom and stuff on anniversaries because I want people to remember them. I don't want them to be forgotten.
Yeah.
That's the power of photography too, right? I mean, if my house caught on fire, what would I grab? I would grab my photos of my loved ones, so yeah. Now we all have phones, so maybe I'll just grab the phone because the photos are on them.
hope the clouds work in that night.
Yeah, the clouds are. Yeah, there's all that stuff.
The idea around storytelling, again, you know nothing about me, but I have a digital storytelling business.
Oh, cool.
So that as you're talking about story, you can like I'm very interested in how you look at it, because I feel like digitally, like that's kind of where it's video, right? We capture people on video talking about who they are, why they do what they do, and just like articulating their passion instead of selling their product and service. And I feel like it's almost a cathartic experience. Where they actually get things out of their head that, you know, they've been stewing on or ruminating about for all these years. And when you actually ask them the question about like, why'd you start this? Or what drives you to keep this thing moving forward?
Totally.
Not many people get to say that out loud.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of people that are willing to hear it and actually do something with it, like receive it and say something back to them. So the art of storytelling, I find it fascinating, and even more fascinating your profession, just shooting photos of these like wildly interesting moments.
I do love video. Like I like film and movies, but I still think a photo, you know, it's the old cliche. What's the old cliche? A photo says 1,000 words or whatever it is. Yep. But when you look at an image that just sticks in your mind and you just remember that one moment, I think it's so powerful, because with video, I love film. You know, I'm a huge connoisseur of watching movies and I'm a voracious reader. But when you look at a photo, you know, it says everything in that one frame, or a series, like a photo essay. I just think it's so powerful. And you could sit with it for a while. You could sit and stare, like you go to a gallery and you look at, you know, a famous photo, and you could sit there and you just, I guess that's part of maybe that's creative. Why photography is creative, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think it's, I think the word storytelling is, it's not getting overused right now, but it's definitely very top of mind for a lot of people.
It is. It's funny because when I started in my profession, photojournalism, we already knew we were storytellers. But then when it changed to video, I remember editors being like, hey, you're visual storytellers or you're documentary photographers. And so I used to just tell people when they asked me what I did, I was like, I just take photos. Because it's like, that's what I do, take photos.
Do you, where are you right now? So
I left in 2019 full-time because I was asked or offered, luckily, a job documenting frontline workers at AHS, Alberta Health Services. So I'm still there, and then I freelance on the side for other publications, for Getty Images, Flames, whoever.
So run me through I'm on you for the storytelling piece. Run me through what that pitch looked like and why you kind of jumped at it. Like what kind of...
You know, I had turned 40. And I'm 45. I had turned 40, and it was some former media folks who had gone over there, were saying they were starting a story hub, storytelling. Yeah. And I was just looking for a change. Again, I felt like I had also grown up at the Herald, you know, from 21 to whatever. I was just looking for a change. And media, you know, I also am of the age where I'm thinking about saving money. I wasn't getting paid that much at the newspapers. So I was looking for that opportunity, but something different and new. And I've always loved healthcare stories, right? Like, so I jumped jumped ship, and I was there a year, and then COVID hit. And so then I was literally on the front lines documenting the amazing work of all the healthcare workers.
I feel like I remember some of those photos coming out.
Yeah, you probably remember there was a photo of Dr. Simon Demers Marcel, and he had his head in his hands and he was calling on his knees.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was that photo, yeah, so
this is cool. So when HS has this idea to share stories, I find this fascinating that they actually want to do that. But then to actually hire someone like you to do it, is it an organic thing? Do they kind of send you in an area for a time just to or do they have ideas of what they want to document?
We have ideas in our group what we want to document, and then I have a lot of ideas. Like backtracking, even at the newspapers, I would get my daily assignments, hand it to me, but I've always worked on personal projects. I always come up with my own ideas. I think sometimes, and I taught at SAIT for a year, actually, photojournalism in between all this. I'm not a good teacher.
Why not? Why not?
I don't like public speaking.
What the fuck you doing here?
Yeah. I'm trying to branch out and market myself.
2024,
yeah, 2024. It's the year of marketing me. So yeah, I totally lost track of where I was going.
I was bugging you about why you didn't like teaching.
Oh yeah, did not like teaching. But I remember saying to the students, and I still go in and guest speak sometimes, about you have to have your own ideas. So a friend of mine, Dawn Walton, she's a great journalist. I remember her saying, you get to choose your own adventure. So instead of waiting for someone to give you an assignment, as we call them, you get to choose whatever you want. So I remember being like, I don't know anything about Hutterites. I want to go out to the Hutterite colonies here and having, that. I don't know, there was Indigenous relay racing. I don't know anything about it. Let's connect. And yeah, you get to choose your own adventure. And I think that's kind of what's missing in, I want to say, like photography, photojournalism.
Yeah. The idea of you have your own passion projects and they were just like, you wanted to kind of go all in on them, or like with AHS now, it's like a balance of their ideas and then you get to do your own thing.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Like I'm not medically trained. Like I'm like anybody else that goes to the hospital when you're whatever. So seeing like being on the front lines, that was, it was heavy. Hard. It's heavy.
Yeah.
That was the hardest. Those were the hardest photos I ever had to do, because I had to make those connections as well to ask people and in their most vulnerable moments. So I did that, but then I also documented the city and how they adapt it, like Ramadan, so Eid. How are they going to celebrate Eid if you can't get together with people? So it was like drive-through Eids, drive-in movie theaters, drive-in concerts. So I just documented not the lighter stuff, but just how everyone had to adapt.
Yep.
Some of it was really interesting. So I did and then I did a book for AHS on that. All the proceeds from that book go back to like the Alberta Children's Hospital Foundation, and
And the book was focused around
COVID, the pandemic. It was, I think it was Alone Together. Yeah. I honestly haven't looked at it that much, because now someone asked me how I deal with covering heavy stuff, and I just kind of ignore it.
And that's really your...
that's how
you deal with it.
Yeah. I not ignore it, but I became so close.
Yeah.
I do become so close to the people I photograph, especially for like my personal projects or like long form documentaries. For COVID, like I'm still friends with some of the people, like this woman Dixie and her husband Chuck died. I'm still friends with them on,
How do you manage that? So when you go shoot something that's heavy, you're in the moment, your kind of adrenaline's going, you're working, you're being professional, and then as you're driving home or you put your camera back in your bag, like the decompression time.
Oh yeah.
How do you manage that?
I probably didn't manage it as well as I should have during that time, because I definitely drank too much when I got home. That's how I was managing. So
I think everybody.
I mean, everybody. That's the thing when you're covering like everyone was going through it.
Yeah.
It didn't matter whatever you thought, but everyone was affected by COVID. So we were all going through this, but to manage it, I have a great family support system, so I could talk to them. Other photographers, like, they were going through similar stuff. So it was, And I was lucky I have a job, right? Like I have friends who lost their job during COVID. So,
For sure.
it was hard. But I always look back at like, I am documenting history. That's my job. That's what I do. So I kind of just look at it that way too. Yeah.
I find that when I have even like coming off some of these shows, you kind of, as you're putting all the stuff away and like, it's almost exhausting. Like you have this, like, it's just such an energy, like it just everything's out of you.
That is a good way. My husband and I talk about it a lot because he was in the business too. And it is exhausting. Like I said earlier, talking to strangers every day, talking to strangers to get them to trust you. If I'm doing a photograph of a CEO, a portrait, I have to get that person comfortable with me. And sometimes you only have 5 minutes.
I know.
And you have to get a pretty decent photo, right? Because you have people expecting it. So it's exhausting. And when I get home, like I don't go out a lot. I don't go out a lot with my friends. I'm a homebody. Like I just want to have a glass of wine and read a good book.
Recharge.
Yeah. It is exhausting sometimes. But I also recharge when I say don't go out. I'll just go pick another project to work on. I do a lot of stuff in the country, like Western photos. I like that. So I'll just go for a drive and take photos. That's how I recharge.
That the constant search for like a passion project or a personal one, do you actively think about it, or do you kind of?
It keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
I can't turn it off, and I think I probably annoy my family and friends a little because I'm constantly looking at the light, or my husband and I will be watching a movie or something. I'm like, look at that light. How do you think they like? Yeah. So it's constant, but that's just who I am. It's me. I can't turn it off.
So how do you manage all the ideas? Like if you have, I don't know, 10 personal projects you want to get through.
Then it's hard.
Then is it just like managing time and access and just like trying to just move all the pieces to get one of them going?
Yeah, sometimes. And I mean, the lighter ones are easier because obviously easier access, right? I'm working on one now, a personal one on dementia. My father-in-law died of dementia in December, so it was a year ago.
Wow.
I knew obviously like everyone about dementia and Alzheimer's, but I'd never seen anyone affected personally by it, like in my family, until my father-in-law. And so I wanted to learn more. And I remember the day, it was 2017, and the Dementia Network magazine was launching, and I was there for their press conference. And they had a fellow named Alan and his wife Joan, and Joan has dementia. And I took a photo, it ran front page. We still get excited when we say A1, like our photo goes on.
That's A1 is front page?
Yeah.
You should be excited. How would you not be excited?
Because no one reads newspapers anymore.
Oh.
My son, like, now I could be like, it was on Instagram. It went viral. But anyway, this is 2017. And so I just in 2021, I thought about finding them again. And I did. He remembered. In fact, he has a laminated copy of the article that he carries around in his briefcase. And he's 79. Joan is 73 now. And so it's been since 2017. So it's interesting now. I've been following them since 2001, doing a photo essay just to break the stigma, right? I find a lot of what I do is hard. Like even if we talk about mental health, I need to photograph someone and put a face on that, but I want a real person. And it's hard sometimes, right, with access, because it's a very personal thing to talk about. But the people like Joan and Ellen, or whoever I've documented who said yes to let me have that access, like that's what keeps me going. The people that say yes and give me this access are giving me the greatest gift by sharing their story. Because like I said, I honestly don't think if I was in their shoes, I would.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like being in front of the camera. So like they're doing what they're sharing with the public is amazing.
What does that photo essay look like? Like, what does that actually mean? Like what is there an end? Are you giving them, is there something physical behind it?
I don't know. It's kind of open-ended. Like sometimes I'm trying to think like the El Dahir family with the Syrian refugees that started a farm. I've been documenting them for them. I've been documenting them for a while, but there's no real end, but I have done stories and published some of the stuff as I go.
Gotcha.
But that's the thing. It's a personal project. It ends when when I want to, or when they say they're done. Or with Barbie Harris, it ended because she died. Yeah. Right before she died, she reconnected with her daughter, who she had given up for adoption. Her daughter was 21 at the time, but she gave her daughter up when the daughter was 5. So I was there for that moment. So it kind of ended, right, the story. And then she unfortunately died. Yeah. She actually gave me, again, I'm jumping around.
You're not. You're like...
This is non-linear storytelling. This is not linear. Barbie gave me, her sister actually gave me at the funeral a Mother's Day card that Barbie had given me. She'd already died, but had bought this card or whatever for Mother's Day for me. She died May 5th, so Mother's Day was just like May 8th. And I still carried in my car in my glove box. Yeah, she used to, I think it said something like, to my blonde bitch friend, Leah. Yeah.
These, the connections you make, they're deep.
They are deep. And that's how I know in photojournalism, you're not supposed to, they say, or whoever writes the rule book, and I think it is changing for the better. I've become friends with them. Yeah. I mean, they're sharing after the story, but they're sharing, like, how can you ask someone to let, like, you know, there's a photograph of Alan and his wife, and Alan is Joan's caregiver. Joan has dementia, and he's changing her. Yeah. And they're letting me in there, right, to see that. So how can you not be friends? Or more than acquaintances, or, yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's that energy exchange. Like, I'm back to that energy thing, because that's...
It does.
As you tell me this, I'm just like...
Yeah.
I feel it, like, just being on the other side of, like, what these experiences could feel like.
Yeah, it does get heavy. I mean, like, I've made so many connections too, like with staff, nurses in the hospitals too, that you're both there for this moment that, like, only you in that room know what it was like. And so you connect with someone on that really deep level, emotional level. So, yeah. I was going back, you were saying, when I was younger, I also read a lot of Hunter S. Thompson. That's why my son's name is Hunter.
Oh, no way. I was wondering. So weird you said that, because you said his name twice, and I was like, I wonder if I should ask where that name came from.
I was gonna, yeah, because he'd ask me. He always asked. He used to ask, and he's like, no, that's not true. I'm like, yeah, I read Hunter S. Thompson's book about when he went like and did an in-depth book with the Hells Angels, right? And so at the end of the book, like, to leave, I think they beat him up or something like that, or whatever it was. But I just remember reading that, being like, this is amazing journalism. Yeah.
So what else is, like, where are you at? Well, obviously your AHS, personal projects. What else kind of keeps you? Is that enough? I'm not trying to what else do you have going on?
That is, my hobbies are photography. No, I love reading too. Watching movies, but I've covered Olympics for Team Canada. So I covered Olympics for Post Media, so the Herald. And then when I left, so 2021 Tokyo Games in Beijing, did the Pan Am.
What do you do when you go to these games? Are you shooting all the sports, one sport?
There's a group, there's 5 of us. Okay. And then our photo editor manages us and tells us where to go. But keep in mind, these were the COVID Olympics. So there was no fans. It was really bizarre. Like, Simone Biles is standing right where you are, and it's just us photographers. It felt really weird.
5 photographers from Canada?
Yes. On Team Canada.
How do you get...
I have no idea. People ask me this all the time. I'm like, I don't know. I've been around a long time.
But like,
you'd have to ask them.
But it's... Do you get caught... Does it catch you off guard when you get invited to these opportunities?
Oh yeah, for sure. You have to. Like, I still have to pinch myself. Okay. Like, so I still have to pinch myself every day that I make a living taking photos. Sometimes I have to stop and think, like, this is amazing. I mean, I remember I photographed the Queen when she was here in 2005, and I remember we were all lined up photographing something, and her husband was up in the, like, fairly close to us, and he started joking with the UK photographers about the football game or the score. And I remember being fairly young then, a new mom, and thinking, like, oh, this is so weird. Like, I'm going out for dinner with my dad tonight, but I'm just here photographing. Like,
you shut that off and go for dinner.
Yeah. So sometimes I have to stop myself, but I still get, I'm still learning every day. And my son keeps me super humble. Yeah. Nothing keeps you humble like your
See
kid
boy,
being like,
I'm just going to the Olympics. Yeah, okay, Mom.
yeah, or like I'll send him a photo, be like, hey, Hunter, look at this photo I got. Yeah, Mom, I could do better with my phone. Like, just like, so he definitely, yeah.
Keeps you down.
But I thought I would make it to the Olympics in figure skating, like myself as a figure skater. And I didn't. So that first time I was at Pyeongchang for figure skating, I remember being like, oh, I ended up here anyway, just in a different way.
Which is amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If I could go back and tell my 10-year-old self that I'd still make it, just not on the ice.
Which is, it's fascinating that you actually think that, as a kid, as a youngster, you always have the dream of getting to wherever the end result is. And
yeah, I thought I'd be like on the podium.
Now you shoot the podium.
No, I'm shooting. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Those, you can't plan for those moments, like to get to the Olympics and like to go shoot all these things. So how do you manage that? Like, the desire to be in these situations? I'm sure you want to be there. It's a little out of control, out of your control. So how do you manage this? Like,
oh, it's a good question. I work hard, so I don't stop working. So, when I talk to students, they're like, how do you get this? I'm like, you really have to you have to work hard. Yeah. And I've failed a lot, like everyone. I haven't gotten the assignments or jobs that I wanted. Yeah. Really, like I work hard. I think it's hard for me to turn it off. Yeah. So, I don't know what my son would say, right? Like he's 19 now and he's at U of C, engineering. Again, I don't know where he came from because I can't do math. It's hard. I think you also have to be a good person. Yeah. Like I said before, like there's a lot of big egos in my industry, massive egos, really good photographers. But no, would you want to work with someone who can't be part of a team? You have to be a team player. Yeah. So I think that's a big thing.
You said two things which I find kind of how I like to operate too: hard work and be a good person. Yeah. Like it's kind of these two basic pieces.
But people forget.
Yeah, they like get overlooked all the time.
Yeah. Or I saw this quote, or I don't know where I saw it, and it might be kind of, it was like, high achievers hate mediocre people. And it got me thinking, like, if you're a high achiever or you're trying to be a high achiever, you work hard, and then some people come in and they're just lazy. Yep. It does annoy you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think I find interesting is the people see the highlights. So they get to see you whenever you shoot something and post something, get published something somewhere. They're like, so lucky.
Yeah, they don't see the failures, or they don't see what it took to get that photo. That's it. My colleagues and I talk about, here's a perfect example. At Beijing Olympics, I was covering snowboarding, the pipe. I know, I'm terrible.
It's awesome.
See, so people who are really into sports get so offended that I'm like, my son does. If I photograph football, you do have to know the sport because it does help for sure. And sometimes I'm Googling the sport before I'm going to the event. So, because sometimes we just don't have that sport. Like, when am I going to photograph fencing? Yeah. But yeah, so we were doing snowboarding, snow pipe tricks. And I remember it was freezing, like minus 40 is what it felt like, and wind, and you're carrying, 30 pounds of gear on your back. You've got to hike up this steep, icy hill. So you have your like big heavy duty crampons and you're hiking up. And you don't know what position to go in. You haven't photographed the sport before. And and then you get a photograph, you start photographing and you're kind of getting into the rhythm. And you're like, I should move over here. So you move and you get a really killer photograph of the athlete from Estonia. And then the Canadian goes and your photo's not great, or you miss it. And then you just hope they're going again. Yeah. You hope that was a warm up, right? So it's like, so you really have to, you try to get to events early. Yeah. And you try to read the room, or it's hard. And I think you also can't crumble if you do make a mistake, because you've got to, it's that, I'll never forget being in school and hearing the story when JFK got shot, and one of the photographers missed that photo for whatever reason. He was standing on the wherever he was and missed it, and knew that he couldn't come back to the newspaper until he got something else. So I think he stayed up all night listening to the scanner, and he got the photograph of the guy who shot him. Mm. So it was just kind of like, that has always stuck with me, that, and I've messed up. Like, you know, back in the day, I forgot to put film in my camera.
No way. Sometimes
I don't have batteries or cards. Like, I forget a lot of stuff, and it happens still. Like, just the other day, I had to borrow an SD card from someone because I don't have any. You know, now I keep them in my car in all different everywhere. Places. They're everywhere. But it happens. Like, I still, I remember, here's an example of making a mistake and messing up. This is funny. I mean, I wasn't funny at the time. So again, Beijing, we, because I was lucky, I was on Team Canada, so didn't have to take a media bus. A driver picked us up from the hotel, and I was going to cover downhill skiing. And it was far, so we were in the parking lot, and I forgot my long glass in the hotel room, my like long lens, big one. And I was like, so I had like a 70 and 200, but I was like, I need that 400. And so I was trying to communicate with the driver to like, if he can turn around, but he wouldn't. So I was like, how am I going to photograph this without that? And so I remember thinking, oh, I know someone who's working, I think at CBC, and she's got a lens. So I was texting with people, phoning people, got a lens, showed up at the hill. I was like, okay, they canceled it because it was too cold. And then I told my boss after. So guess what? But yeah, so that stuff still happens, and I laugh about it. In the moment, I'm freaking out.
It's trauma.
Yeah. But yeah, it's, yeah.
Do you have, for where you operate in the space, like high performer, do you get to talk to the youngsters about how to not explain how you've done it, but to talk about the things that are important, like hard work, being a good human? Like, do you get to talk about those things? I do at SAIT,
like when I went in and talked to a class just a couple of days ago.
Oh, cool.
But I feel like if someone was telling me that when I was young, I probably wouldn't have listened to it or understood it. Sure. I feel like you need more life experience to listen to, I don't know, right? Like if, like, look, when you're 18, you think you know everything. Yeah. Like my son, and he does know a lot, but I don't think, unless you're a type of person that has just like grown up with hard work, or because of your life circumstances, maybe you've always had to. I was lucky in that my mom instilled that and my dad instilled that in my brother and I, like since we were little. Yeah.
Do you think you learned it just by watching?
Yeah, like seeing my parents work hard for sure, and seeing what my mom had overcome. You know, like I said, she growing up in a family with an alcoholic dad and being they were very, very poor. Yeah, definitely.
I think it's interesting you say that. I think the youngsters might not understand how basic it is to actually to get it, not to get ahead, but to actually move down a path. Like
And keep in mind, social media today, I'm so glad it wasn't there when I was young for various reasons, but people only put the good stuff out.
For sure.
And if you're looking in my industry or in photography, commercial photography, it's only the good stuff. I mean, I remember when, I'm so old, I remember when Facebook started, and my friend Marianne would we'd go to the Photograph a Flames game, and she would post the photos that were like out of like show like, here's a near miss, this one's out of focus, and like, you know, because you only share the good stuff.
Yeah, people have a twisted sense of reality.
Well,
because we're seeing highlights all the time.
We're also seeing, I mean, like photos that are heavily filtered. No one likes what they look like. So AI, right? Like, is it real? I always question photos. I always look up who the photographer was. And I always question if it's real. No matter what I'm reading, right? Like, we live in a day where fake news. So I'm always questioning. That's the thing I do tell students and kids, like, just always question find out what the source is. You know, we live in an age of clicks, clickbait. In my profession, it's not about being first. It's about trying to get it right. Obviously, we make mistakes, but
Yeah, you've seen it change so much.
It has changed a lot, but there's, you know, in 1998, when I graduated SAIT, in photojournalism, I remember them saying photojournalism was dead then. So I don't think it'll ever be dead.
No.
It's going to change, but there has to be a place where authentic, real storytelling goes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a giant question. Like,
It is, but I mean, it's, yeah. I mean, we can go deeper and talk about like journalism is so important for democracy. In my profession, like visual storytelling, you know, it's like, it's so important to know like visual literacy. I can give you an example, actually. So the photo of that doctor on his knees, that was for a photo during COVID. He was calling a family member. Now media has used that photo to be like, there's healthcare workers are stressed out, but that's out of context. When I photograph Hutterites in Alberta, and let's say a publication in Toronto runs a photo of mine that was taken in Alberta from a colony here, but it's a story about a colony in Manitoba, they're totally different. So visual literacy is huge. We talk about that a lot when photos are used out of context.
Yeah, now that's like the Wild West. Like
it is.
Digital, like it's just...
So I always question. So I'm curious and I always question. Yeah.
Amazing. This has been really cool. I'm glad your 2024 initiative was to market yourself. Because it's cool to hear a story.
Thank you.
And I've said this to a few people lately. It's, people always see the highlight. They see the end result, right? They read your resume, they see your photos. They're like I said, lucky how they do it. But there's this like backlog of hard work, trauma, experiences to actually get you to this point. Yeah,
and a lot of no's. Like back, we call them PFOs.
Please fuck up.
Yeah. So I got one the other day when I was pitching something. So, yeah.
You just don't see that.
No. Maybe I should start posting those.
Well, as you're like,
I should go. Yeah.
But it's like documenting the real journey, right?
Yeah.
It's like documenting the process of, you know, as you're telling me this story, I'm like creating this side story in my head. It's like the story can be, you know, the sleepless nights. The story is the no's. The story is the hours. You know, the story is the outcome. You know, the story then is like the relationship. Like there's this like whole like mini story within this like one frame. You know, like people see
that's
that
that's what we say. We talk about that a lot in photography. That you don't see the backstory of, you know, sometimes those mediocre photos were the hardest to get. Like the relationship building, but also getting to that spot, right? Like, we're standing on, for sports, we're standing on the sidelines at the Heritage Classic that was at McMahon, right? It was minus 40.
Cold, I was there.
Yeah. And so to even get one photo that's in focus when you yourself are freezing, your gear's not working, it's a lot. So people think it's easy. It's a lot. It's a grind.
Especially with people think it's easy with technology.
They do. It's easier.
Yeah, but there's still like...
But I always say this, we joke, like, it doesn't matter if I take a photo on my iPhone, and I have. It's a great camera.
Yep.
You know, the best camera is the one you have with you, but it's who's behind the camera that matters. It's not the technology. You can learn that after. But it's, capturing a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the story behind your moments that you capture would be fascinating to...
Oh, they're funny. I'm a klutz. So, I'm... Maybe that's how I gain access and trust with people. I'm just myself.
Just roll in.
Just roll in, and gear is falling out of my bags. Yeah. I'm always worried about, dropping stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just myself. Like, we're all the same. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO of a company, a high-performing NHL athlete. We're all the same.
Which I think that's fascinating. I think that to share that story of humanity being the same, doesn't matter where you are, like everyone's put them in a closed room and they're kind of all the same.
We're all striving for the same thing, right? Hopefully, like
really cool. I end the show with one question. When I say Calgary, where does your head go?
Home, my childhood memories. Yeah. My mom, actually. Every time I think about Calgary, it's my mom and my brother. If I ever left Calgary, this would be, they're here. The memories are here.
Thanks for taking the time. Been really cool. It was a funny experience for me to figure out. I'm like, holy shit! Like, when I figured out who you are and what you did, I was like, oh my God. So thanks for saying yes. Thanks. I'm glad I caught you in 24.
Yeah, because 23, I would have said no.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.